Yeah, I start with cutting up the strips like 15 to 5 centimeters basically, and I do stacks with those strips, maybe like 20-25 strips to get a 3 centimeter thick stack. Glue that together, put it in the press, and yeah, that's basically what I do. So I'm Jonas Johnson from Smedjan. I'm based here in Sweden, and I'm a full-time knife maker. I've been doing that for 5 years, I think now. Started out as most people, like a hobbyist, doing some knives on the side. I do a lot of different style of knives, but mostly chef knives. I like to experiment a lot with different materials, and yeah, I do a lot of weird shit. Yeah, basically this is what it looks like when I get it. What I try to do, I try to scrap out the pieces that are really rough, like this, and try to only use the nice looking stuff. Sometimes you get lucky and get like whole sheets of only this, and you don't get this, but it depends a little bit on the quality and on the season, I would say. But what I do is I just clean off the excess loose stuff, and you can do this basically anything. You can put it to the belt grinder if you want to, or whatever. Just try to get most of the loose stuff off. Once I've done that, just cut off this end here because that was a little bit bad. It's not that super duper important. I mean, this stuff is actually kind of, I'm not sure if you can pick it up with the camera, but it's really basically in layers in itself. So it's not the most dense material. That's why we use the glue later on. Normally I try to find as thick pieces as possible, but basically they are around 1 to 2 millimeters, around there. So, and it's quite soft, so it's very easy to cut with a pair of scissors. And the thing with birch bark, when storing it, as you can see, they kind of warp when they lay around. So either you can, when you store it or you dry it, put something heavy on it just to keep it down. Otherwise, it will just roll up. I actually pick some of it myself. I don't have like a property myself where I have a lot of birch, but my father and my uncle has. So whenever they go out and put down some trees, some birch trees, I always go there straight away. As long as it's the right time of the year, because you can only harvest birch bark basically from April to late June, when the trees sap, because the bark is too attached to the tree outside of this like time limit. So what I do is I get them aligned basically, and the sheets are not always in the same size, so some are longer than others, and I just try to have every piece the same length because it's easier to glue them up. So what I want to do with this is I want to put glue between each layers, and then put it in some kind of press. And that you can use like something flat on both sides and use either some kind of clamp. And basically I know I will use basically all of it in this. You can use whatever epoxy you want, half an hour, 45 minutes or so, at least, so you can cut it up. It's a regular like wall style handle, but the thing is this I use like birch bark and I stack it, and then I have 2 end caps. In the past, it's a very very like old traditional way of making handles, at least here in Scandinavia, and in the past they just like took the knife blade and had a very long hidden tang, very pointy, and they just put sheets and sheets and sheets, like small pieces of birch bark on it, and then heated it up a little bit, and then put like end cap, and then peened the tang. because the birch bark in itself actually work. The oils, or not the oils, but there is basically like a natural glue in it. So when you heat it up, it shrinks and also glues a little bit together. Yeah, the traditional way of doing it. But I wanted to make like a removable handle basically, or at least make it in such a way that I could like trust the integrity of it, that it wouldn't like break easily. This is a bit messy, but I'm sure you can do this in a better way, but yeah. So basically just put a thin layer of glue on all the pieces. You don't need to cover it, the whole surface, because yeah, it will fill out when you press it together. As I said, you can use epoxy, you can use wood glue, you can in theory use CA, like super fast drying glue as well, but the problem is you need some time, put it between every layer. Normally I go for like 130 millimeter or so, and two stacks is, I mean you always cut the ends off anyway, so you lose a little bit of the stack when you cut it up. And as you can see, they are quite irregular. They are not super uniform shaped, but it doesn't really matter. You're gonna either grind off or cut off most of it anyway. You can also, I mean, if you have the ability and the press to do it, you can do this actually in full sheets as well. If you have a glue that allows you to work that long. You don't need to cut them up in strips, but I feel it's normally easier to control everything. And as I said, it's not much glue needed. It's actually coming out in between everyone here. And I don't worry too much either about getting glue between the wood and the bark, because the birch bark, because it's kind of flaky, even though I've cleaned it off, it's still very easy to just break it off and without destroying the stack. Now we'll just leave this to dry for maybe an hour or so. It depends on the epoxy, what glue, like drying time you have on it. I mean, you can basically use like a 90-second glue if you want to. The only thing is it dries so fast, so you need to really hurry up and it gets really messy. This is messy as well. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I find this one also, one of the reasons I use this one is because it's the color is actually a little bit similar to the birch bark. So, but that doesn't really matter. You can use any transparent glue that you want, basically.
1 hour later.
Once the glue has dried, just take it to the bandsaw, cut it up in smaller pieces, like 5 by 5 centimeters or something like that. When I've done that, I usually take it to the drill like a 12mm hole in it to put a dowel in. And I do that to all the pieces. And then the only thing I need to be aware of is I need to measure out that I get a long enough handle so that it's not too short. If I want like a 130 or 140 millimeter long handle, I need to have enough material for that, of course. So I drill the holes, I pick out the dowel, and I usually use like a 12 millimeter just regular wood dowel. Bought from any like hardware store. Either I use that as it is and put the pieces on and glue that together with epoxy also and put a little bit of press on it on the ends, or I take the dowel to the bandsaw and cut it in half, adjust the sides a little bit so I get the slot for the tang from the start. But what I've found is that I usually have to adjust it a little bit anyway after I've done that, so I normally just put the whole dowel in, glue it together, and wait for the glue to dry. So basically what I want to do is I want to have enough for maybe one more piece and then glue it together. So I'm gonna actually gonna go and cut off the dowel in the length I need, somewhere around there. It works. So I can just go and cut this off. Actually, I actually learned from my colleague Frederick, like this dowel thing, because in the past I usually did like, didn't use a dowel in the middle of the handle. I just drilled them and glued them on the tang, but because I have the dowel, I could make it removable, which is better because it's easier to work with overall. So what I've done here is basically I've cut the dowel in half, adjusted it a little bit on the belt grinder, and then I've just glued the stacks on to the dowel, also glued in between. Yeah, this is pretty much ready to go on a tang, on a knife, but what I want to do is I also want to glue on the end caps. But before that I need to clean up the surfaces a little bit and square everything up so everything is nice and square and aligned. So that's next step. Yeah, I don't touch the grinder basically before the whole handle is glued. So then I use, for the end caps, depending on the material I want, if I want brass, I have some pre-cast bolster, at least for the front end of the handle, and for the back end I make it myself, and then I glue them on the ends. The one thing you also have to be aware of when you're grinding it, if you use like end caps of metal of some sort, like brass or copper or stainless or whatever, the birch bark grinds away pretty much faster than everything around, so you need to be aware of where you are, because otherwise you will end up with a handle just looking like a banana in the end. So that's one thing I can say that you need to be aware of for sure.
Introducing the birch and bevel knives, exclusively available at moderncooking.com. Their story begins with a collective of passionate craftsmen, including Frederick, Jonas, Tobias, Jez, and Peter. Each brings their own unique expertise and artistry to the creation of birch and bevel knives. Experience the fusion of strength and beauty with the delicate cladding of wrought iron on the exquisite Apex Ultra Steel. Embrace the artistry of the Honyaki Japanese knives, meticulously crafted by skilled artisans. Ready to embark on a culinary journey like no other? Discover the full range of birch and bevel knives at moderncooking.com. Thank you very much for sponsoring this video. Check out the links in the description below.
It's pretty much like I said, clean up the surface and then glue the end caps. And the front one, the front bolster, if you'd like to call it like that, these I buy pre-made. So these are basically like stamped out. I think, or they might be either, I would say they could be water cut as well, but you can buy these for basically nothing. At least the brass ones, brass and copper is no problem, but stainless, I don't have pre-made ones, so I need to make them myself. But those are basically the three different materials I use for the end caps. So copper, brass and stainless, and I just glue it on. The back piece I need to make myself, and I usually do make it a little bit bigger than it's actually needed, just to have some wiggle room when I grind it. But it's just the same thickness of brass that I've drilled a 6mm or a 6.5mm hole in, and then countersink with a 8 or 8.5mm drill to fit with the end screw. And as I said, this one I use 8mm brass rod. And you can make this quite simple with just using the drill press, thread the hole, and then you can use the edge on the belt grinder to, it doesn't need to be pretty. I mean, it's hidden anyway. So, but of course, if you have a lathe, it's easier and maybe, yeah, looks a little bit better at least. But yeah, so that's basically it. The problem when doing like a solid wood handle, you need to really be careful when you drill if you want the through tang, because you can drill in the middle in one end, but it can go out the side in the other end. So but with this, because it's so many parts, so many steps of doing it, you always have you can prepare everything as you go. So it's easier to just make a hole straight through the whole billet basically of birch bark before you glue everything together. And then because I grind everything to shape last, basically the last step before like doing the finishing touches with oil and stuff, it's easier to see where you are. If you get the handle a little bit out of line or not aligned with the tang and the blade, you can always like grind it to the shape you want, as long as the hole in the back is in the middle. It's okay. So yeah, or actually we can you can use whatever oil you want to. I normally use true oil, birchwood casey or whatever true oil you can get. Just a fast hardening oil. It needs to be quite thick, because otherwise it would just disappear into the wood. Yeah. That's it. Just gonna let it dry, and then it's finished. You can have different views on this. I mean, some people don't like the shiny look because it looks kind of artificial. But for me, I like to do it because then I know that nothing gets into the handle, basically.
Thanks for watching. I hope this video inspired you to make your own cool style of handle. Let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you want another knife making video talking about handles for knives, check out this video over here. Cheers guys, and see you in the next one.